to ourselves things so we'd understand more. But on the other end of that, there's something we used to know. There's the most sacred states that can be reached. The first person, and I know how this is going to sound, let me qualify it right after I say it. The first person you need to make love with is yourself. And I'm not talking about masturbation either. It doesn't matter whether you touch yourself or not. That way. You know, I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. By the way, you won't grow hair on your palms and those kind of things. If you do happen to be one of the people who enjoys doing that, no, it doesn't mean you're schizophrenic or not schizophrenic. It just means it feels good. But the question is whether or not you're doing, what are you doing with it? You generate energy with this stuff. Whether, even if there's some people who have literally decided, forget it, it's not worth it. Yeah, I mean, if it wasn't, that's why they got him, they sent my twin to me in time because I was going back to be a vessel virgin, not sweating. We just cut it off at the waist. You know, it's too much energy to be in relation at this point. I'm not interested anymore. But a lot of people do that. They transfer it to the astral. They have these lovely dreams of meeting your twins or your partners and having lovely relationships on the astral. The funny thing is a lot of people think, oh, it's okay because it's not real. Yes, it is. You're actually doing stuff there, right? Then you bring your astral body back into your body here, and whatever frequency you picked up in that exchange, you put back into your body here in the down steps, right down into the 3D plane. So astral sex does count as sex. It also means that I know a little game that happens in the Rich Movement a lot. I won't say because I played it, but I could have, but I won't. So where you do this thing, like, okay, I'm in a 3D relationship, right? And I'm in a committed relationship. And there will be times where it's not going really great, right? And you happen to be a little bit fluid and, on body and that kind of stuff, or in the dream state. And you have this just wonderful, like, person you knew, like, 6 incarnations back that you always just felt really good with. There's this thing happening in the Rich Movement with people where it's like, well, okay, astral doesn't count here, right? I mean, a 3D commitment. All right, so that means I'll be faithful on 3D, but that doesn't count when you get to D4. Yes, it does. Because you're still bringing the coding in. So anyway, there's a whole bunch of information that has to do with sacred sex. This isn't going to be the sacred sex workshop, right? There's a lot of other things to understand first, so we understand about the fact that this thing even exists. But once upon a time, sexuality was a great sharing where you could reach states of literally 2 become 3, become 1, that were so expanded that they could run so much frequency into the planet that it was a birthing of frequency into the planet. There were ways to achieve being in a state of constant orgasm without having anything to do with sex at all. This is what it's gotten translated in some doctrines as the ecstasy, where you just walk around in that state. This has to do with the state. It's called anaphilia and athanasilia. Anaphilia, let's say, is one you do on your own, and athanasilia would involve your gender twin. Some of the things we're going to look at in this workshop, to what degree, I'm not sure yet. I know it's going to be, we're going to touch on it and show context, but I think there's probably going to be other workshops in the future that get more into it. It talks about the twinning stuff that we talked about before. But in the twinning, it's kind of interesting. We know that, okay, if we have a minimum for an avatar cell, a human cell, we have 1,728 cells roaming around somewhere in the time matrix, right? Where might that be? If we understood the cycles of realms enough and to know that, all right, there are certain race lines in time frames that they would be in. But there's a whole other aspect to what's called the disbursement pattern. As an avatar, how do you disperse your consciousness down? Is there a mathematical formula? Well, there is. And this gets into, first of all, to understand how we come down. They're going to show us how stars and planets come down, how galaxies come down. And there is the formula. And this has to do with the old teachings that have always been encoded under words like the 24 elders before the throne and those kind of things. So we're going to understand about that on a galactic level, an universal level, and then also on a personal level. And this is going to help us to find out a bit more about where did we disperse ourselves to? What corners of the time matrix are we living in? And it'll bring us down to something called the four faces of the soul, which are the four parts of yourself that in density one right now, you need to assemble to get yourself to the next level. But there are also four faces on the universal level. These will be your four primary aspects of self, of your 1728. And it involves yourself and a gender twin on this side, which will be the opposite gender, but having the same, but complementary shield coding, that literally was you and a set of you in parallel. So we're going to be understanding more about that, and I'm looking forward to it because I don't have this data either. And it's like somewhere along the line, I know I remembered a long time ago because I knew all this stuff consciously. But to bring this in right now, it's like the frequency space here is so small. It's like trying to get the Mississippi River to flow through a straw, whereas it's just, the straw is just not big enough because of the frequency compaction here. But we're going to bring some of it through so we get a little more understanding of where we are. What is this thing about our gender twin? Does that mean we're not alone after all? Yes, it does mean you're not alone after all. It doesn't necessarily mean that your immediate gender twin is incarnate on the planet with you. If the cosmic clocks are working the right way in the solar system, it would be. Except they have a nice loop because of my Nibiru and overlays and planetary and solar shields, which have literally created a false cosmic clock, or local cosmic clock, that has created a situation where gender twin pairs misfire, where they very, very rarely run into each other. So they can't do the nasty deed. Now the nasty deed isn't necessarily about sex. They can do it without combining body parts. What they do is combine fields. Because the DNA templates have the ability to match. What's nice to know in all of this, and this is one of the great secrets, is in the mode of Lehre, male and female. Inside each of us, in a particular part of the anatomy, we contain the entire program of the opposite, which means we have our gender twin inside of us, as well as it being alive outside of us. One of the fastest ways to bring it in is to activate it on the inside. And it also means you're not dependent on sitting around waiting here or on a cloud someplace after this life for your gender twin to come along, for you to be able to enter on Thalia so you can ascend. It means you're not stuck. Now, to be able to activate this comes right back to, this was a natural condition until the Mora at Horeb was shut off until 8216 BC. This is coming back into reality now. So we're going to literally learn to engage the, what I think, who is it, Freud they call them, the animi and the animus, I believe, the male and the female and the male. Freud? Yeah. Or was they a word with it? Very early, very early, second one. But this is an amazing body of data because we've been through a lot of stuff. We've been out there, we've been doing planetary grid work. We've been finding out about black holes more than we probably ever want to know about black holes and the people who live in them and the agendas they're running and all this stuff. Finally, we're getting down to the stuff our lives are made out of. So how can these teachings begin to help us understand our daily lives and enhance the quality of our lives? We need to understand Anathalia and the Anathalia state. We realize making love isn't just about having a gender twin or a gender same, because homosexuality is not a negative thing in this context. All right? There are ways that the polarities can balance, so it's not an anomaly. People here have treated it as if it were an anomaly, because actually there's ways that it can, the same gender pairs can actually trigger faster integration of other parallels, which makes them a bigger threat to a dogmatic society who's trying to control the sexual energies of the people here. It's just not homosexuality is an option some people have. A lot of times it comes from, you'll have a male soul incarnating in a female body or vice versa, and they're still who they are. This has to do with Merkabas and how the Merkabas are staying, and what particular whether you're a dominant or not a dominant. That's all. But once we get into the core teachings here, they're meant to give us an understanding of daily life that can add to the quality of everything we do. We can have a love affair with plants, and it doesn't mean about putting them in private places. It means about being able to live real. Sorry if I'm one sometimes. It's not visual. I tend to formulate my words around pictures that I get in my head. And now I'm taking pictures. But no, it's not that. This is the beginning of this one's for us. And we're wearing ourselves out doing planetary grid work as we have. And I know a lot of you have too. You've been coming with us. If it weren't for the people who are coming with us, we wouldn't be able to afford to take a group of people at all. We'd be going like, like with the red hanky on the stick. Oh, and we get there from hell high water. If we were asked to be on a certain set of grids, we would get there whether we had to swim or walk or crawl or whatever, was necessary. But because there were so many of you, that it was amazing. I watched this from the beginning, and I just kind of stood back and, wow, look at this. I used to hear about these New Age people, that had books out and that kind of thing. And they do their grid work things, and they get 20 to 30 people that go all over the place with them. We had 144 in Texas. I mean, people are just coming to workshops that are in easy places. We're going all over the world together. And it's because the collective has been, each person has paid their way to go, that it made it so the whole group could go. It made it so we could go functionally, where we could go and have a hotel room that we could stay up in for 48 hours or however long we have to get stuff on paper. It's been a major group effort. It's about time that the teachings turned in a way where they can be for all of us now. Because I don't know about you, but we're tired. We'd like to be able to say, okay, now that we got that fixed for a while at least, can I relax? Can I heal? Things hurt. Ouch. My body's been hit with so much frequency that I feel like I'm 900 years old every time I wake up in the morning. How do I get over this? This is the beginning of bringing those teachings back. We're going to go into Kathara again, but at a higher level. But it's also a step-up program for other people out there who don't know if there's a flying plane. That the other people out there that don't know about this work, some of them don't want to know because they've heard things from the other teachers, not particularly true. Some of them are true. Yes, I did call them Stephen Michael. I really did. I really did. And you know what? I don't retract it either. I'm personal. It was said with love, but it was said very bluntly and clearly. Well, now it's time for the healing to begin. We're going to do some of the things on here, this amazement. We got the usual secrets of the wheels, and wheel stuff. And we're going to get into our universal creation templates and the manifest galaxy. We're going to get into what science knows and where that plugs into what we know. We're going to get into the local neighborhood, our galactic system. We're going to get into stellar Merkaba, solar shields, and the most misalignments that are here. So we understand what our Kathara centers are holding, what it is we need to release. And then we're going to have 4 primary techniques. One of them is the 24 Ire lotus breath. Now we've done the 24 Manic lotus breath. There's a different way to do the 24 Ire ones. And after you do that, you get to do something else, which this is where we begin to activate the Mode Eture. Because it takes the 48 simultaneous lotus breaths of the Ire and the Manic to be able to reactivate the Mode Eture complex. Once that's activated, we can begin the process of clearing the karmic imprint from 208,216 BC, which is clearing out the zodiac imprint. That means if you happen to be a Virgo, or you happen to be an Aries or whatever, well, if you really want to be attached to that, you can, if it makes you feel happy, but grow beyond it is what you're being challenged to do. You don't have to be confined to this. What it's more so telling you is what forces have been limiting you, not about who you are. What forces have been trying to define your personality for you. Where you, on your own, when you align your Merkabas, you will have much more insight directly into what you need to do instead of checking your star charts. Don't worry about what the stars are doing to you, because you will be immune to what they're doing to you. Which means, now, you're with your mind. Your thoughts, your choices of thoughts and words and actions, that will be what determines what happens? Not some offhanded, refracted, bouncing light that's coming at the wrong angle from planetary misalignments that we have to be going through. This is the first generation on this planet since that last stellar activation cycle that it went really wrong, which was 208,000 to 16 the first ones that will be able to reactivate the parameter field and the motor as well. The first ones that will be able to, because once you do that, you will be able to bring all of the other Merkabas into alignment wherever you are on the planet. It will align the density Merkaba with the natural alignment of the solar shield, but also the galactic shield all the way up, as you'll see what all the way up means, to the Akka shield. So you can bring your density Merkaba into proper axis alignment here, and it will completely transmute the influences that are bouncing at you right now from the electromagnetic frequencies that are coming down on the planet. This is why astrology works, by the way. Because right now, yes, there are stellar frequencies that are constantly light forms, not just light. There are light waves, radio waves, there are all sorts of invisible waveforms that are bouncing off the planets, through the planets, down on the Earth. They are affecting our shields. We're made out of waveforms, so those waveforms are affecting our waveforms. We can become immune to those by building our flame body and by activating, finally. It's like we built flame bodies, but now it's time to make it rotate. Because before, it was hanging there, but it couldn't spin. Now, it can spin. And that means there's enough frequency. It will spin heliothallics. It's like creating a heliothallic sphere around your entire being. This is the protection we've been looking for. And this is the beginning of being able to get some, and it won't be immediate, but some control over our biologies so we can begin to reset the clock. What would that mean to reset the biological clock? Think about it. Biological clock. Oh, that's the aging thing. Yeah. That means we should be able to influence that. We should be able to influence disease and deterioration. There's a certain level that the body gets to that you can't regenerate. And that's what happens as people get older. Their bodies progressively have to do with the seed atom spin, their own seed atom. If the seed atom can't spin, it isn't receiving frequencies from the solar spectrum and being able to synthesize them. Progressively, the body burns out. The seed atom slows down and goes slower and slower and slower, and the body has less and less energy, so it consumes its own energy. Until eventually, if that happens, it turns into what's called an Antichristos Merkaba, which is different than a Metatonic Merkaba. That is also an Antichristos Merkaba. But there's a natural form of Antichristos Merkaba and an unnatural form. Metatonic is the unnatural form. If a seed atom burns out in a planet or a star or a person, what happens is eventually the top spiral of the Merkaba slows to the point where it reaches 0 point with the bottom, where the bottom spin and the top spin hit the same spin rate. And then one's going one way, one's going the other, and they stop completely. And then the top one will reverse to the bottom spin, and the whole field will compact, and it will get denser and denser and denser. Eventually, on the star level, it becomes a supernova, explodes, and then very often becomes a neutron star, where it gets very, very, very dense, very, very dense core. On a personal level, this is when your template shatters. This is what means, this is what the ashes to ashes, dust to dust is about. That is actually still a sacred way to go back. This is not the metatonic force creating one on purpose. Remember that. But when we watch our aging process here, what we are watching is our density 1 seed atoms burning out because they have been blocked from the natural cycles of receiving frequency from where? From the sun. The sun is gate 4 in this system, universal gate 4. Through its rod, it spirals frequency out. Frequency that science identifies as the solar wind is actually spiraling off from the sun and running to the earth. Because the Earth's Merkaba was in the right position on a vertical, with the vertical axis of the sun. The rods would align, and one end of the Earth's equator would pull in frequency from the solar wind in a natural way that would allow the seed atom to be continually recharged. Right now we have these big, bloated, distorted, tail-shaped magnetic fields around the planet. And it's because of the tilt of the Merkaba axis in relation to the solar Merkaba. all of these things have created what we see when we look in the mirror. When we're 20 years old and we can't wait till we're 30 because we might have it figured out and maybe like have a roof over our head and have a career we might like and be functional by then. By the time you get there and you get the roof over your head and the career you like, and you can actually afford to buy that pair of jeans you really like, you don't fit into them anymore. Or you're too darn tired to use that snowmobile or those skis because it really hurts. There's something really ironically horrible about the way the aging process takes place here. Because by the time you get old enough, wise enough, and smart enough, and functional enough in this system, to get all the stuff you wish you could have had when you were young and you felt a zest for life, by the time you get all the stuff, all you can do is take care of this stuff. Because you just don't have enough zest left to use it. And it's really, really sad. It's a catch-22. And that's the way I go back into the spiral thinking, like, life really does no good and does it. Especially the torture me. If we can. I don't know if this generation will be able to do a huge amount as far as the aging process goes, but theoretically it's possible. The frequencies that are coming in now, I mean, I can't promise you that you're going to go and like reverse your aging process. I can't promise you that. I can even promise myself that next year I'll be a size 7, which I would love to be as late as really was. Right? Working on it. But what I can promise you is the technologies that we use will bring in frequencies, and if we have to say that's theoretical, because there's no scientific proof yet, fine, it's a theory, but theoretically, we will be able to bring in frequencies that you will be able to begin to not only reset the Christosidam, Triditharanitharan. Now, it's energizing it, so it begins to spin fast enough to compensate for the distortions that have occurred before. We're on a journey together. And I know it's going to a good place. And I know these teachings, for me, are true. I can't say that for anyone else. That's why we don't make any claims. We don't have the Merkaba diet yet, where, it's better than you lose weight in like 6 weeks. It's better to hurt it. Believe me, I'd be still spinning, right? Eventually, things like that, I think, will start to balance in the bodies better. Because part of what's happening, where our bodies do stuff that like betrays us, sometimes they get too skinny, sometimes they get too fat, sometimes they get too hyper, sometimes they get too sluggish. But there's so many things the bodies do. It's like, who are you? It's a part of yourself. But it's a part of yourself that's like, you and it have an estranged relationship. It's like you got divorced quite a while ago, but you still live in the same house. Well, it's kind of like trying to build a marriage. And we'll begin to do this. Part of the reason, the big reason our bodies are falling apart over this is because of these genetic Merkaba alignments we carry. The core template, where all of that is locked in, is from what is called, in sweet terms, the zodiac. I've said for a long time that one of the greatest ways that let's say, negative agenda people tend to put one over on other people is to put something in front of their face and call it something else. This is what they're doing with the zodiac. What you do with people that get into the zodiac do is not only, it's bad enough that everybody carries this imprint, but when you really focus energy into it and become dependent on it and really plug into that whole mindset, you actually download your whole D3 strand and totally letting it control you. You're feeding the twists in your atom. And that's why I've always felt, even before we had this information, I always had I feel like growl inside about astrology, because other people say, oh, I'll read a chart for you. That's okay. You don't really want my chart done. Why? Because I don't want to know. That's why. I don't want to know what those things are. I can feel those influences. I'll find a way to clear those. And I can always feel that, but I didn't know why. This is going to give us enough of the information to understand why. It is a shield. It is a template. And it's called the Nibiru clock. What we call the zodiac is the Nibiru and Metatonic clock. And we do have the right and the ability to transcend it. So that is really what a lot of this workshop is going to be about. But at the same time, that's not really the focus of much of any of it. That understanding you'll get. You get that understanding as you go along, right? Because there's a whole bunch of other things that you'll also understand about, like how galaxies spin and what our galaxy is doing, and about the fact that, yes, there is a black hole at the center of our galaxy, just like science is theorizing there is, and why, and those kind of things. You'll learn all sorts of neat stuff. But what it comes down to is you have enough knowledge to really see where the pieces fit together. And to understand where that fits in your body, and to begin to replant the frequencies of the natural heliobaric transduction station, which has been dormant on this planet since 2016 BC. This is going to be an interesting experience, I think, for all of us as we work with these frequencies. We're getting more and more into biology at this point. This is the first wave. There's going to be another wave that gets into, I know that there's huge volumes of books that I've seen in the libraries, the internet libraries, that I don't know when they're going to have us translate them, but actually, when it's really complicated, they'll have, the books are step downs off the plates, where it's so sophisticated from a place you can't even pull the frequency. That's why we still have the old books. You can translate them off the books, which are already stepped down. There's whole volumes that have to do with about consumption habits, about eating, sleeping, or needing to eat, or needing to sleep. I mean, all those kinds of things is really 3D stuff that we deal with all the time. And other things that will help us to understand how to help other people. Is one of the hardest things. We might get ourselves to a spot where, well, we might not be perfect, we still get 80s, or, we're still getting older every year, but, I can deal with it. But we watch people around us sometimes go through horrible things. Children, we watch them go, like into self-destruct, or bad things happen to them. There's a huge amount of information that as we bring in this high consciousness, we can learn how to handle these type of situations that not only involve ourselves, but involve the people we care about and the people we love. And then if we can involve them, and it's about involving people we don't know, or we don't care about, or don't particularly love, where you realize you could know them and love them too, from the inside out. At some point, I believe, in the Ireland workshop, we're going to get into projecting. They're going to teach us, before too long, how to start doing group projections. So we can, let's say, attend the inner workshops. And you'll see me in the audience, well, he teaches those sometimes. I just said, I'm tired. I will sit, obviously. But you can literally be away in the other states of consciousness and bring our information back here. They're going to be beginning to do that, because that's the first step of getting anybody to a Stargate. If there's going to be anybody that gets to a Stargate in the body, you're going to be sure they got through with the mental and emotional bodies first. So we're going to be learning some secrets of projection, and also secrets of manifestation as we go along. And Sunday, we're going to go into what's called two-way manifesting, which will make sense, a lot more sense, once we understand how the stellar stuff works, and how the biology stuff works in relation to this kind of stuff. We'll then have a knowledge base to understand how to begin, not just understanding the mechanics of manifestation, but the methods. So we're going to begin to play with manifesting, and we're going to be asked by a group called the Adandrea, which we met in Andorra. There's history to the Adandrea. They're also known as the Crystal People, the first Crystal People. They were the founding races for all of the original Crystal People, and the Crystal People were the founding races for the Iani, the Azarites, and all of the founding races of this matrix. So these guys were from the pre-950 billion years ago when they set up this matrix. And they're contacting now. And it's a real homecoming. So we're going to be working directly with them on something called the Universal Seed Vision. We're replanting a vision seed into the cosmic clock. And we're going to be learning how to project to certain areas we have to do with the corresponding areas to the Earth's cosmic clock. And some of these places are gorgeous. One of the places looks like Stonehenge, but it's all made out of crystals. It's made out of selenite crystals, and they all stand. And they actually don't need crossbars, because the crossbars are meant to send the energy back down the other side. They're not meant to, they're meant to raise it up in the air. So this is the beginning. It's a dream. If life is a dream, which it is, we're all in a dream here. We incarnate into a dream when we think we're physical. And we certainly are, as long as we think we are. And once we think we're not, things start to change. But this is the dream. We're in a dream state. It's no more different than the realities we experience in dream state. The only thing different is the space-time coordinate and the density of matter that's connected to that. But this is a dream. I don't know if you've ever learned yet, but you can wake up in your dreams